and that was their stablecoin did something called depegging, and it actually lost its value through problems with their mechanisms. And instead of it being a solid $1 coin that's always worth $1 no matter what happens to the rest of the market, it started to go down in value. And once you saw it at like 97 cents, people are like, wait, what's happening here? This is not supposed to happen. Even just that small amount is a really big deal.
Hello, Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to 2023 and to a special 3-part episode of From the Blockchain, where the ladies behind the podcast take a look back and review some of the highlights of Web3 in 2022. This is Ashley, also known as Board Becky, and over the next 40 minutes or so, you'll hear myself chatting with NFT Ignition and Cara about some of the past year's biggest stories and our personal takes. It was a busy and crazy year with a lot of ups and downs, and it's possible we missed a few things. Make sure to find us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at @fame_ladies. Tag us in your stories or posts about the episode and let us know your thoughts or any big stories or major innovations you think we should have mentioned. I also want to tell you that it's been such a pleasure running this podcast for over a year now, and the From the Blockchain and Fame Lady Squad team want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Now, let's get to part 2 of our 2022 year in review. Alrighty, we're getting back into this conversation. For those of you who are watching, you might notice things have shifted around a little bit. Mom life, I had to take a moment, and these ladies carried things forward. So this is just the way things are sometimes. That's okay. So I think we're kind of in April now, April 2022, looking at some of the things that happened at that point. Tell me, where did we leave off, and what are you feeling is next that we need to talk about?
Yeah, so the next thing I'd like to mention is Coinbase NFT Marketplace launched in April, which we all know Coinbase is a huge player in the game. It's where a lot of people onboard their fiat, just their regular exchange, and Coinbase Pro. It's probably one of the largest, like maybe top 3 marketplaces out there. They launched an NFT marketplace and gave access to people in beta in April where you could go and create your username. Something cool that they did was that you were able to comment under NFTs. So if you like somebody's art and you're not buying it, but you want to tell the artist, oh, I really love your use of light or color or whatever it is, you can just leave a comment right under the NFT in there.
I really loved the I'm actually trying to Google when Super Bowl is.
The Super Bowl.
I'm big into
How can you tell this is not a bro podcast?
That's January, hon.
I have no idea either.
So that would have been correct. So, how we were talking before about how at some point the market started to kind of chill out, but the marketing for Coinbase in particular was really exciting because it had this level of exclusivity. If you had signed up for the beta, everybody wanted to be on the allow list. And I remember one of the things being the Coinbase commercial. Everybody was wondering if we'd see a little hint of this marketplace. And then it became that iconic QR code commercial who everybody had feelings about. But I really, actually, I remember the excitement around this particular marketplace dropping, and I just thought that they did a really good job in terms of creating the excitement around it.
Yeah, well, certainly this is one of the largest platforms with the most reach, especially through their crypto trading stuff. And so I think for many of us earlier on in the year, there was a lot of excitement when Coinbase NFT, because we did feel like that was going to introduce a lot of normies into what this, or at least crypto people, at least folks who hadn't thought about the other side of all of this. So that was really interesting and so funny. And I hate to, this is probably going to happen through this conversation where we rewind a little, but Cara, you mentioned the Super Bowl. I can't believe that was February 2022. It feels like yesterday. And that was a big deal too. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a lot of speculation about the halftime show. Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Dr. Dre, all these NFT holders being participating in the halftime show. It was, by the way, as an elder millennial, major 90s hip hop, nostalgia. It was beautiful. All the like parents in the stands, I think, were loving their lives. But anyhow, there was speculation, I think, like, is a Bored Ape gonna like virtually show like pop into this? And but there were commercials at the time, again, bringing sort of some of this stuff into the like popular culture, which I think was really neat. I don't think it quite, the music exceeded our expectations, but I don't think the inclusion of NFTs met the expectations of a lot of people. I think people were thinking there was going to be more. But of course, as you all know, Snoop and Eminem have done a lot with their Bored Apes over the year, and I don't know when, but it's worth mentioning. There's been music videos featuring their apes, which obviously, as a Bored Ape holder, I'm excited about, but more so, again, just introducing this new world and the intellectual property into like to the masses, which I think is really neat. So sorry, that was a bit of an aside, but Coinbase NFT platform launched in beta. The Moonbirds collection launched in April, which was a big deal. This is so embarrassing to admit, I did not know who Kevin Rose was. I had no idea.
Right.
But Kevin Rose is the founder of Moonbirds, and he's apparently a big deal. And I learned that. You guys, did you know who Kevin Rose was before this?
Yeah.
I think I did. Yeah.
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 So I think he, like, I had to ask a bunch of people, and I've already forgotten. He was like the founder of a lot of these Web2 companies. People might compare him to like a Gary V in his involvement in certain things, and as he's like very much well respected, like entrepreneur and startup kind of figure. But I wish I could speak more to Kevin Rose, but I can't. But it was a big deal, and all the DGen bros were like super excited about it. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, it was a super hyped mint. It was able to maintain a lot of its value, which is usually not the case when projects have a super high starting price and a high mint. I feel like that one was 3 ETH as well. Might have been 5.
It was a
It was a
higher,
high
yeah, it was a
price.
higher price. There was a lot of criticism, but also a lot of support. Like it was one of those launches that sparked a lot of conversation about like values and how to approach a mint, like whether you do the Dutch auction or not, those sorts of things.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those kind of mints where people were excited about Kevin, as you've been mentioning. People were excited about the team associated to it, and that was interesting too. It wasn't like, who's dropping this? We don't know, but it's cool art. At this time, it was totally based on who the team was, and I liked seeing that change too.
Yeah, and I think it brings the conversation and the narrative more into the mainstream when a figure like that is working on something. I remember I was on a plane listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast episode with him interviewing Kevin about Moonbirds. And so, like, Tim Ferriss has a huge audience, and Tim Ferriss, by the way, has also launched something of his own this year. So it just, like, this is less about talking about the specific project, but more about these kind of bigger activations that impact how the space moves. So, and I think Moonbirds is they had an interesting shift over the year too. Like it sparked a lot of the conversation around intellectual property and how those things are set up. They were I think, I don't remember when it was, but they basically went to
It was in August.
I think that
August,
yeah,
yeah,
and it changed the ownership of the IP to Creative Commons. Is that the right language to use? Creative Commons?
Yeah,
So
CCO.
basically like anyone can use. Yes, CCO. Yeah, so all of these things, and that's why sometimes, even if you're not an owner of an NFT project, but it's worth sort of paying attention to what's going on, because I think a lot of the decisions being made really, and some of the tension and controversy really, it adds flavor to like what is going on right now in the space. What's the big conversation, what's working, what's not working, what are people excited about, what was a trend and is passe, etc. So I think Moonbirds is one of those projects, and probably one still to watch. And I think it still is one of the higher valued NFT projects during this bear market. Although it definitely, like, when they made that change in IP, there was, I guess, like some downward pressure on price. I'm sure since then there's been less of that. But the other thing in April, Yuga Land, I remember this big time. So Yuga Labs, folks behind Bored Apes, which we talked about it already quite a bit, they released their NFTs that were basically access to their upcoming metaverse. And that's maybe not even the right language to use, but the other side, their commercial, their advertising, promotion, marketing for this was actually really, really fun and exciting. A lot of like mystery associated with what it was going to be, but tons of hype, tons of NFTs. I remember personally deciding not to try to go and mint any because I knew it was going to be a gong show. And this was at a time when still gas wars were, people were thinking about gas wars and how much ETH they were spending just on the transaction alone, let alone what they were buying. Because I own, an ape, I was going to get access to my free mint. So I just kind of patiently waited for that. But it went bonkers. Do you guys remember the Otherside day? That was like a huge day where I think it impacted a lot of where the market was going to go after that.
I think one of
I
the
see them
interesting
nodding.
one of the interesting things about both of those projects that you mentioned is that they speak to the trends that took place. So I think the other labs or Yuga Land kind of took off of what Pixelmon did. So there were Kevins to get on your land. I forget what the Kevin equivalent was for the Yuga lands, but everybody kept saying like, "Oh, I've got a
They,
little."
The
What are they
coda.
called?
the codas.
Codas. Those
Codas.
freaking
Coda.
codas. But codas for me was totally a callback, was like 1,000% a callback to the Kevins of Pixelmon. Like if you had one, you were super lucky. And in a great way, it's like how we were learning off of each other, how this like hot mess, which then became a really cool marketing trademark, was then used for Yuga Labs. I do want to jump back really quick to the Moonbirds thing because that was also a trend that took place in the space where the problem was actually tied back to Bored Apes, the argument of who owns IP and how much do you own that IP and can someone like Ryder Rips do whatever he wants with it. And I felt that Moonbirds had that discussion and decided, well, we won't have a problem with that if it's Creative Commons, which means that anybody can create a derivative of your Moonbird and thereby actually create marketing for your IP. It was still a really hard discussion to have. I know several Moonbirds who weren't necessarily crazy about it, but I loved the conversation through action that was happening in the space. There's a lot of that still happens where people are growing off of mistakes and those mistakes actually become marketing tactics or they help develop a project in a different way.
Yeah, that I don't know. The one thing about that one, and I know we're kind of like diving back, but the one thing about Moonbirds that to me the IP distinctive IP between NFTs in a say 10K collection, like there's some NFT collections where I think the distinctive IP between each one might have more meaning than others. And like the Moonbirds, for those of you listening who don't know, you can Google it, but I'm not sure if there's enough like that you can do with your single individual Moonbird for it to matter. Like, I don't know. I'm up for the debate. I do like, maybe I'm just a Bored Ape Maxi where I'm like, well, Bored Becky has like these cool teeth. So that means that she can be on a cereal box. Like, I don't know.
You sound like a Bored Ape
But
holder.
it's,
If anything, I think the Bored Apes have too many signaling within their PFPs.
oh my gosh. So so back to the Yuga Labs and other deeds. Danielle, do you remember what amount approximately was spent on, like, people were really upset because the
Yeah.
argument was they should have anticipated the volume, and they should have set things up in a way as to avoid people getting the term we use is wrecked,
Well,
spending
here's the
thousands.
thing. So, because of the way that the contract was made, is actually what caused the gas wars. They actually, there's several different ways that contracts can check for whitelists, basically, to see who's able to access it. And their way wasn't super efficient. I'm not a coder or a dev by any means, but I've been told by people who know what they're looking at that They did it very inefficiently, so it made it very slow. Each transaction was very slow for it to do the checking to see if somebody was able to access the sale. It caused gas to go way up because there's all these people getting kind of clogged in the pipeline trying to mint their things, and gas was up to like 1,800 gwei. Like people were
Yeah, I
spending about 3 ETH total to mint their land, and I don't remember how much of that actually went towards the mint, but it was like 30% went towards the cost of the NFT and 60% went towards gas.
Yeah. And so the frustration at the time was that like obviously no one wants to spend that kind of money on gas, and the experience really sucks because you can't prepare yourself well for it, especially if you saved as much ETH as possible to be able to secure that one piece of land, and then suddenly you don't have that available to be able to have a successful transaction. But the other part of it is, this term like the liquidity in the market, like just spending all this Ethereum on gas and no one really being the beneficiary of that, like that it basically is
Miners.
just lost in the eco. Yeah,
The
miners
miners get
get
the
it,
money. Not
but
all
like
of
the
it,
companies
but
that are trying to,
some.
yeah, it's just not where people are intending to put their dollars or their
Yeah.
crypto, right?
Well,
Like people are intending to, yeah.
do you remember the response that Yuga Labs had to all of this was that they need to make their own blockchain because obviously Ethereum can't handle what they're doing. And I feel like
I don't
just
know.
based on what I know about the smart contract, to me, I feel like they were setting themselves up for that. They're like, look, the network can't handle us anymore. We need our own blockchain, guys. Like, we need our own blockchain.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the point of this right now is not to like, we don't know necessarily what should be done, shouldn't be done, but we do know that these are the types of problems that get in the way of mass adoption for a variety of reasons. It creates a negative narrative, it creates a negative experience, it literally sucks money out of the industry, and bad vibes just all around. So that was, I think, as far as I know, an all-time high for gas being spent for one activation. And I think the entire space has said, like, no, we cannot do this. This is not cool. This is not where we're headed. So that's it, it's a marker for where innovation needs to happen for sure. And we didn't really have that problem again, at least not to that scale through the year, because trading volume just went way, way, way down. So I think some of us are actually missing the days of high gas because it was the days where trading was actually happening. I do feel I remember kind of watching this happening. And again, this is on the heels of the war had happened, started, different things were going on. And it really felt like after the land stuff happened, that's when we saw a big drop. That's when ApeCoin had major fluctuation for like 2 days. It went high and then went super low. There were other reasons for it related to the land drop and just the way they decided to like offer the land. But that's kind of neither here nor there. But so it went high, low, high, reached its peak again, and then just started dropping, and ApeCoin values started dropping, and Ethereum started dropping, like everything, all the cryptos started dropping. And did we miss like where is Terra Luna is like immediately after this, I feel.
May.
Yep, that's May. Yep.
Yeah. So uh I know there's some things we didn't talk about with April, but I think in May, like this ties with the conversation. The cryptocurrency Terra Luna just basically collapsed for a variety of reasons. I don't think we can get into all of the whys, but when that happened, with on the heels of all these other things, the confidence in crypto, in NFTs, and people just being scared, as you said, Danielle, like panicking and feeling like we have to withdraw all our
Yeah.
assets. That's when it, like, I feel like there's been no real return. Like there was some hopeful moments through the year since then, but that was the marker of where things like really
Yeah.
shifted.
Yeah. And one thing I will say about that kind of goes in that just kind of goes into like what, what really happened is we have these things called stable coins, and they're coins that are supposed to maintain their value through a couple different mechanisms. Some of them have burning and minting mechanisms that kind of maintain value. Some are algorithmic, some even use like game theory and stuff. But one of those was Luna and Terra. And that was their stable coin did something called depegging, and it actually lost its value through problems with their mechanisms. And instead of it being a solid $1 coin that's always worth $1 no matter what happens the rest of the market, it started to go down in value. And once you saw it at like 97 cents, people are like, wait, what's happening here? This is not supposed to happen. Even just that small amount is a really big deal. And then there was massive sell-offs, which people were worried, can they get the peg back? Can they not get the peg back? So some people were buying, some people weren't. And we basically watched this thing that was supposed to never change in value go from $1 to $0.
Mm-hmm. And that happened like how fast?
Like over the course of 2 days.
Yeah. And I feel like that was around a time where I was thinking about making some moves. And then suddenly I just feel like I did not have the option anymore. Not related to Terra Luna specifically, but just anything related to my bags. Like it just went from what felt like a very comfortable position to suddenly everyone was scared, like overnight.
And we had
And
friends.
so I think
We had friends who lost like 20 G's in these things. Like people were losing real money. And then also, like, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a really specific dance that started to, it was kind of the mark of the beginning of the crypto crash that some people were saying. They were starting to call it really early. But it was this dance that like SBF started to save a little people here, move some money there, and just apparently was making money, at least at what was being reported at the time, while everything was crashing. Somehow the leader of FTX kept doing the right dances to save certain companies. And we then see where that plays out ultimately, right?
It's fun, not funny. It's just interesting to observe how like all of these things are so connected. Like, and this is why I keep thinking, 2022 was sort of the year that, Web3 was just so interconnected with cryptocurrency markets. Like, and like as an artist, and you're just trying to, play with art and showcase your art, and the way that people may or may not be interested in buying your art, this over the last year felt so connected to the like day trading of cryptocurrency, where I just feel maybe Danielle can speak to this a little better than me, but like 2020 2021 was a lot more experimental. It wasn't necessarily like people were participating, like what can we do, right? And I'm hoping next year we're going to be further away from just being so tied to the cryptocurrency markets in terms of like how we talk about Web3, like more from a macro level. Because it's really sad. We're for those of you who don't know that are listening, the three of us with Fame Lady Squad are involved in Hug Studios, or Hug, an accelerator program that's co-founded by Debbie Soon and Randy Zuckerberg. And we've talked to founders of really great projects with like really great art and or really great business ideas. And they launched right like the day that Ukraine was invaded, or they launched the day that like things happened with FTX or whatever. And we've heard these stories now where they were properly set up to really get something rolling, and these external factors impacted their strategy 150%. Like they had to take a back seat and like, okay, what are we going to do now? So anyways, I just want to kind of bring that part to light, because I think that's for those who are listening who are thinking about building in this space. These are the X factors that, at least in 2022, everyone was grappling with. I mean, there was a lot of fun things in May, though.
Goblin Town, epic. Goblin Town was a bear,
Mm-hmm.
even though we weren't really in the bear yet, it was a bear market project. It was a project where, you know, there's a war going on, money's down, let's get on Spaces and make weird noise and tie it to burgers. I really enjoyed that project during that time. It was a great way of like just bringing back up spirits because I felt like spirits were down a little bit, and it was easily one of my favorite.
And it stood I don't own one, by the way. I was one of these people because I didn't know about it ahead of time. I was not on an allow list. I basically saw it after it had sold out. And Goblin Town was interesting because it was a free mint, right? Correct me, ladies, if I'm saying anything wrong. It was kind of the first big free mint where you basically just needed access. You just needed to go mint it. The art is actually I think, quite good, but it's like very almost like Ren and Stimpy kind of meets goblins. Like it's very kind of there's a satirical kind of imagery there or something. So it's kind of if you look at it, you'd be like, what is this? And they are these. Oh, they're if for those of you watching on video, Cara's showing some imagery there. Yeah, yeah, they're like funny little gross little guys. They're cute though.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
great.
And so they were like the anti NFT project, like free mint, no Discord, right? I didn't follow a lot about their business strategy, but from far away, it looks like they actually had a pretty decent marketing strategy. Like they have some cool things that they had done. And then they just went crazy. They were trading, and I don't remember the all-time high values, but it was like when nothing else was selling, here's these NFTs selling, by the way, which I'm assuming made some decent royalties for the founding team. So that's great. Hopefully funded them in some way for a bit. But it also shows you how you could flip something on its head and like, who knows? I don't know if the story's out there. Maybe they were planning to charge and decided, oh, this market sucks. Let's do free mint. I don't know. That could have very well been it. And it was successful.
I'm trying to
Yeah. I don't
remember
know,
if
you guys. This is one that I think we need to watch.
I'm trying to remember if it was Moonbirds or if it was Goblin Town that ended up being tied to, I think, Truth. Either it was called Truth something or it was called Proof. But some of these projects that
Proof.
kind of seem
That's
to come out of
Moonbirds.
nowhere. Moonbirds is Proof. And then is there one called Truth or something? I feel Truth is that Goblin Town maybe. But there's some of these I should double
Maybe.
check that. But
No
there's
idea.
some of these projects are sometimes tied to Reng does a really good example of that, where it's like you're just seeing this project explode and you're like, why? And then you realize they're actually a branch of these bigger projects that have either done well or just look like they're going to do so well. So these are actually branched projects from these projects. But yeah, I loved Goblin Town. I don't own one either, but I just enjoyed what they were doing.
It's one to watch. I'm curious to see what they do in 2023, if anything. I think they probably might. I don't
Yeah.
know. Not financial advice, you guys.
I think they also went through some
The
kind
other,
of version of
Mhm.
they went through, yes, Truth Labs. So Goblin Town is tied to Truth Labs, who also have the Secret Society and the 187, and it's a pretty strong project. But I will say that I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but that Goblin Town did go through some iteration of the Hugs program as well. So all the more reason to be one to watch. I think it's not on a whim. They're definitely thinking through what they're doing.
it also might mean you can't judge everything by like your initial feeling. Like when you see the art, as an example, the art's good. It just might seem silly or something of that nature. Um, the other thing that happened in May was the ENS boom, which was, I think, a big deal.
Yeah, I mean it was numbers, it was short words. Then it kind of went into Spanish and other languages and stuff like that. But yeah, the numbers kind of started that boom, and that was because somebody decided that they wanted to make a club that only people who had an ENS that was numbered 1 through 999 could join this club, and it was an alpha club, and you
Mm.
can learn about new projects and all this sorts of stuff through there. But for those of you who don't know what ENS is, it's basically your wallet domain. You can buy, like, for example, I have NFTignition.eth. Now, if somebody wants to send me an NFT or give me access to something, I can just tell them NFTignition.eth instead of giving them that 30-digit long string of letters and numbers. You can also link websites to these domains. This is basically your login for Web3. Like, say they take off Web2 logins on a website, that would be your Facebook, your email logins, and they add ENS and you would log in with your wallet, your address that way.
There's we did do an episode with Sandy Carter from Unstoppable Domains. So you can check out episode 39. That was in September, I believe. And that goes a little bit deeper into like what are ENS domains? Why do they matter? Why should you look into it? So little plug for ourselves here at From the Blockchain. But yeah, that was a big one. That's one that a train I have not jumped on that I probably should is like start collecting some of these things. Yeah, there's been a ton of like celebrity stuff over the last, actually, I would say 2 years when it comes to NFTs in particular. We're seeing some pay for it now, which we can talk about. But one of the big ones in May was Madonna and Beeple doing this NFT collaboration. And it was like, it was super bizarre. I loved seeing it though. Love Madonna. She's been associated, in this space as like a Bored Ape holder, World of Women. She's obviously managed by oh gosh, my mom brain, what's his name? Guy.
Siri.
Thank you, Guy Osiri, who's involved with Yuga Labs and World of Women, but also, is a big time music celebrity manager. So it's interesting. I'm always so curious about like what goes on behind the scenes with that. But Beeple, for those of you who don't know, is like a pretty big time NFT artist. He's the one that did the $69 million piece that was sold at, I can't remember if it was Sotheby's or Christie's, pardon me, early on, that really sparked a lot of interest in the space to begin with in 2021, I think. But they did this like, and his style is like super weird, right? Like his style is like very abstract, very like thought provoking, sometimes a little bit controversial in terms of the messaging he's trying to get across, and did these like really bizarre stuff with Madonna. I wish we were prepared with screenshot.
Oh,
I
no
don't know if
problem.
if we can do that. We might get ourselves in trouble.
Oh, we might not be able to screenshot. There you go. Lesson learned.
Good call.
But basically, if she did 3D scans of her body and provided them to people so he could make a exact replica of her body in this art where she is giving birth to different things. There's one where there's like these mechanical caterpillars crawling out of her. There's trees coming out of her, and she's talking over the whole thing. Definitely listen to them with sound on. My favorite line was, "I am the mother of all technology."
So good. So that's a fun one. Check it out. We might get shadow banned if we post that on YouTube because it might be too risque. But it also, I don't know about the copyright stuff. So that's something we got to think about as we move into video. So, oh yeah, this was June. This was June of 2022. Oh, he was charged, not when it happened. Yeah. All right. Sorry, guys. Yes. I'm looking at my notes, obviously. Nate, I'm just going to call him Nate, who was previously an employee at OpenSea, had been accused in 2021 of doing some weird things, basically like knowing what NFT projects were going to be put on the like discover page, if you want to call it that, the front page that would obviously be promoted and more easily seen and known about. And so there was accusations that he was basically insider trading, right? Like he knew what was going to blow up and he was going to profit off of it. And he had special access because of his role at OpenSea. And he actually, at the time, obviously he got fired when these accusations, or let go, better word. He was let go at OpenSea when these accusations were made in 2021. And a lot of people in the NFT community, I remember, while feeling like those sorts of actions were very poor judgment and not ethical, also really missed Nate because at that time he was their like direct channel into OpenSea when they needed support. And this is when OpenSea was probably seeming like at the big giant of the space, but was really just operating as a small company, from a foundational level. But anyways, in June, Nate was charged with insider trading, which sets a precedent about NFTs and knowledge about things and this sort of space. Maybe it didn't come as a surprise, I guess, but none of us really knew what the details were until they released all this
It was
information at
all
that
over
time.
about 13 ETH. That's a sad thing. He only
Really?
made 13 ETH off of all the trades associated with
He could have made
his
a lot
accounts.
more
Yeah.
if he wanted.
Oh yeah.
His story
We do
is
miss
Oh
him
my
though.
Yeah, we do. That's what makes his story interesting, because he was there during the Wild West, as we like to call it. It was like when it really was the Wild West, when you'd wake up, receive an airdrop for a crazy amount of money, when some new artist came out and all of a sudden everybody loved that artist. And Nate was what I think a lot of companies are going to try to do, or continue to try to do, or that we will see more of on the internet period, which is create a relationship with people online as one person. So instead of receiving messages from the great open sea, we received it from the equivalent of the Radio Shack intern, right? Like, it was a person that we could feel that we could relate to, and was a person. And he also was really good about like being one of the team. If you had a problem, you could actually tweet at Nate and he would fix it. And so he really felt like someone. And so it felt really bad when we found out that he was doing what he was doing. And then the other part, the cold water part of it, was that he actually received punishment for it, some form of consequence for it. And I think that changed a lot of the way that things felt in the space. All of a sudden, people were seeing, like the SEC has come around. We've just seen a lot of like, you have to answer for what you've done, and you will now receive real consequence. So that was a big one. But I do miss Nate sometimes, Nate from OpenSea.
Yeah. Although it does speak again to this maturation. Is that the way you pronounce, like, maturing of the space? Like that sort of like one person being the inbound, like that's just not sustainable, right? So there's some nostalgia there, I think, for those of us who've been able to watch this evolution of it going from something so small to something so big. I'm sure we can appreciate at Fame Lady Squad like how difficult it is to be available to any community for Q&A. But let's see. So this is where I feel like I missed a lot. Like I sort of knew only a little bit. This Satoshi, right? Left the space, minted one last project. I barely knew who that person was. It was kind of one of these more dramatic moments though. So it might be worth speaking to. Some of our audience might be like, they might not care, but it speaks to the nature of the community a bit.
We should also clarify that you're talking about MFers, not Satoshi, right?
Yeah. See, like, explain who this person is. Explain who this person is for our audience.
Well, he essentially founded MFers, which is a project that's a bunch of little stick drawings of guys sitting on the computer, basically smoking cigarettes and whatnot. It was kind of a meme project, and in June he was like, all right, I made enough money, I'm done, I'm leaving the space. He like formally announced it. He wrote this big letter explaining it, and he's like, on my way out, I'm selling you guys one more NFT. And it was like an open edition of him leaving the space, like him formally leaving the space, which I will mention that I just heard a couple days ago that he's back. But it was just so funny that it's
like Tom Brady.
Somebody would go through all that and formally announce that they're leaving. Like, it's not an airport, don't need to announce your departure. But he made some money on it, so.
Am I misunderstanding?
And MFers.
I'm misunderstanding, because I thought.
Say that again.
I said I think I'm misunderstanding, because I always thought, apart from him naming himself Satoshi after like the creator of Bitcoin, am I saying that wrong? Satoshi Nakamoto? That's not the same guy, no, but he's named himself after that, right?
Yeah.
So just to clarify that, like nobody thinks it's that Satoshi. But the whole point of MFers was that it was going to be made and there would be an end to it, like right from the beginning. So when he first left, and everybody's like, you got rugged, you had a slow rug. All of the MFers, which I also want to say the MFers has been one of the newer slang terms that I've heard in the space. So you have degens, but MFers are like degens, but they do something else. They're not quite trolls, which we had with, I guess that's another thing that popped up. Goblins were kind of an equivalent of trolls, but they were a thing. The MFers were a thing, and then we have our degens. But when Satoshi left and everybody was saying that they were rugged, all the MFers were like, no, you don't understand the concept. We were always supposed to have an ending.
Oh my God.
Which I love.
I thought this guy was associated with other projects though too. But maybe this is where it's like it's so hard to keep up. I don't really know. Anyway, the MFers are one of those other projects where I thought it was really dumb and then I regretted not getting one. And I do think that they're cute. And people have created, because it's also Creative Commons, right? It's a Creative Commons IP, I believe. Like you can basically do any sort of derivative. So there's a ton of derivative projects based on this concept. I think of this simple little stick art, the guy at the computer, and including Fame Lady Squad has like someone created a bunch of them, which are super cute. Yes. And we're allowed to show this Creative Commons. So
would we?
So there's this is
some of these. You think, like in terms of people fighting for?
I don't know.
You think they'd come?
Let's find out. But for now, like we're growing the YouTube base, so we might be able to get away with it for. This is where the Wild West comes into play. Yeah. We're gonna do it till we're ask for forgiveness. We'll try our best.
Exactly.
This would be a good time.
Okay.
This would be a good time to say that was technically free promo, but we are looking for sponsorship. So if anybody actually wants to show off their tokens or have us talk about it, please reach out, hit us up, and we'd be happy to do that for you. We obviously have the capabilities.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes how to reach us. We do have a proper professional. You might not be able to tell right now that we are a professional group of ladies here, but we have a professional sponsorship deck we can share with you. Yeah. Moving on. Some of these things are literally like on the nerdier side, and I don't know much about them at all. So I'm going to let who I'm assuming it's Danielle that's going to know about some of these things, but like if they're important. OpenSea migrates to Seaport Protocol. Yeah. I didn't even know this happened. So yes. I'm going to let you tell us what that means.
Yeah. So before Seaport, there was a lot of issues with people having old listings show up. Say you buy back an NFT or transfer from a wallet and transfer back. That was one problem that was solved by them moving to Seaport because they invalidated all the listings. Everyone had to start over from scratch. But it did also lower gas fees just for transactions and make it a little easier for people to see exactly what transactions are doing. Like if you're sending, if you're giving permission for something, that was part of the process of them giving you more information for that.
That's, you know what? I remember this now. And while I don't understand the tech side, I remember it was a really big deal. And it's crazy how you can just move on when it was like the talk of the day for like 2 days. And then suddenly it's like, it never, not to say it never mattered, but it's again, you're like plugging the hole, like, filling the gap, making things better, all the work that goes into those things. And then how quickly we all forget that someone spent a lot of time making that better. So yes. Same thing with this. Uniswap acquired Genie Marketplace aggregator. I think I saw something about that, but I didn't know. And, Genie Marketplace is a place where this is the Genie that goes and you can buy a bunch of things at once, right?
Yeah. So Genie and Gem are the two that are really popular. They both kind of launched early on, I want to say January, and they really made it easy for people to sweep the floor is what we call it. And it's like buying a bunch of NFTs in one transaction. It saves you gas, and it's, a lot of hype surrounded around somebody buying 20 NFTs in one transaction. But Uniswap acquired Genie, which later on we'll talk about. They actually launched their own marketplace with that, which just happened this month.
It also speaks to this trend we're seeing, and one of the things I think we'll talk about as predictions is like, more and more of these acquisitions, mergers coming together of like companies that are, they're building themselves into bigger beasts than they were. And those, they're not all going to be successful, but it's interesting to watch. The ones that are making these moves. It also means that some of these companies are in presumably good positions to be able to make such moves. So, which I think speaks to sort of the Web3 ecosystem. If you're not paying attention to this stuff, you might think that like everything's in shambles. Well, it's not. People are building, people are working, people are acquiring, just like they're, in any other industry. So we do have a note about cuts of employees. I think we don't need to get into the details of all of this, but more just this trend of like tech sector and the tech sector and streamlining human resources. Is that the diplomatic way of putting it? I think just this trend of like, the economy adjusting. Are we in a recession? Are we not? How do you define recession? I know that even Cara, in some of our conversations, the way you've like referred to this recession, not a recession. I remember you saying that a few times. But it's obviously something that's impacting this space entirely, is like, where's the economy going to be? And where does crypto fall into all of that? Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of our special 3-part episode, 2022, A Year in Review. Don't forget to subscribe. Happy New Year, and stay tuned for part 3.